According to a 2017 report from the National Federation of Independent Business, 84% of small businesses use paid tax preparers to file their returns. So why do you need to read up on taxes? The answer is simple. You, not your accountant or other financial advisor, and not software, run the business. So you can't rely on someone else to make decisions critical to your activities. The National Small Business Association found that 67% of small businesses say that federal taxes have a significant or moderate impact on the day-to-day operations of their businesses. You need to be informed about tax-saving opportunities that continually arise so you can strategically plan to take advantage of them. Being knowledgeable about tax matters also saves you money. The more you know, the better able you are to ask your accountant key tax and financial questions that can advance your business as well as meet your tax responsibilities. Small businesses are vital to the U.S. economy. They employ nearly half of the country's private sector workforce and contribute more than half of the nation's GDP. Small businesses created 64% of all new jobs over the past 15 years. For the most recent tax year that we have statistics, there were more than 24.7 million sole proprietorships in the U.S. About 1 in every 6 Form 1040 filers had a sole proprietorship that year. Another 7.8 million filers reported income from partnerships and S corporations, and the numbers of small businesses are growing.
Distinguished author and America's #1 small business tax expert, as according to the New York Times and the Washington Post. Barbara Weltman, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
First and foremost, you and I have been live streaming. This is the 10th year that you and I have been live streaming. And I would venture to say that there's nobody else in this country have been live streaming for 10 years. And in that 10 years, today we are using a technology called Zoom. This is now the 5th technology that I have used over those 10 years. This week is very, very special also because I try to do our getting together every year at the same time. And it just so happens that your book, and you're now in the 25th year of editing and publishing this book. My goodness. I read that in the introduction. It's been 25 years that we do this discussion during Global Entrepreneurship Week, a function that was originally started by the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City, and you and I are both very, very familiar with the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation and all the wonderful work they do. This is the 10th year also of Global Entrepreneurship Week. I just read that in their marketing materials. And I have been a distinguished partner of that event. This is now my 9th year. I didn't know anything about Global Entrepreneurship Week the first year. Maybe you were the one that told me about it in your daily column or a daily blog, Idea of the Day, which I have been reading for longer than the 10 years that you and I have known one another. So this today is so very, very special. And I want to thank you for taking your time. I want to thank you for all the great knowledge and information that you share with small businesses. Because if they start with this book, now available at Amazon.com and your friendly bookstore, if they start with this book, it gives them a foundation. Nobody knows more about small business than you have, because you've dissected small businesses down to the very essence, and that's money. Money matters, taxes, because one common thread, there's a couple common threads that run through all small business. It's marketing and sales, That's my expertise. Money matters is your expertise, and you're, of course, with all the things you're now a technical expert with all the blogging and marketing you've done in the last couple of years, Barbara. Barbara, I'm reading paragraph 2 from your preface. This is a great time to be a small business. Why don't you share your feelings of why it's a great time to be a small business?
Well, it is. The economy is growing, and it really is poised to boom if we get promised tax reform, I would suspect. But beside that, the reason why it's so great to be a small business these days is that the opportunities are limitless. Because of technology, a small business anywhere can have a global marketplace, can post on social media, and do all of these things relatively inexpensively. So, as I said, opportunities are there. Capital is being available. Banks are lending more, if you look at the statistics, and the opportunity to raise money either through equity crowdfunding or the traditional crowdfunding through various online platforms. So that's a great thing that is available now to make small businesses go forward. And I just think that it's just because we live in a country where we have sort of unlimited horizons and opportunities, that it's just if you have an idea, you can likely bring it forward. You can find funding for it. You can find resources to help you go forward. There's so much available government-wise for free through SBA and SCORE and all this free help that's available to get you going. So it's great to be a small business.
Well, I've always thought it was be great. Small businesses and really the only thing I know. This is my 45th year plus of being a small business owner. And I'm not as active as I used to be, but like you said, I've been absent from the scene for a while, but I jumped back in, and you're right, the things are there. By the way, how is Linda McMahon doing at the Small Business Administration? I was really excited to hear that President Trump appointed her because I've been following her small business career for years with she and her husband. So how's she doing?
Well, she's really the mover and shaker there. So I think she's doing an excellent job in a number of ways. Specifically, for example, today I'm jumping online with a tweet chat for SBA, and we've had several tweet chats going on with experts around the country, having an online conversation regularly, and I blog for them as well every month. So I like that. But just giving you an example, I'm in Florida. I experienced Hurricane Irma. There's so much going on with SBA support for hurricane victims and opportunities for disaster loans and such. So there's a lot going on there, and you can just see from all the materials being promoted through the SBA. And I think so far she's doing a great job, and I'm real excited about having her in that position. And of course, time will tell. We'll have to see.
Okay, let's dissect the book area by area first. Well, you call them parts. And I'm going to throw out a big overriding summary statement of that, and you can break that down then into your favorite parts or things that you find are essential for small businesses to plug into. So in part 1, we will find topics of interest to small businesses. So what's your recommendations about part 1 of your book?
Well, these are kind of the fundamentals. So understanding how the entity that you use for a business, whether it's a C corporation, S corporation, limited liability company, or you're an independent contractor, whatever the entity is, what it means from a tax perspective, what kind of form you file, when you file, and such. So just absolute basics just to get started. And then you need to understand other basics, meaning your tax year and accounting method, because those are the underlying concepts that you use to report your income and expenses. So go through that, and record keeping. And it sounds like the most boring subject, but if you look at the cases that come out every single day, without fail, something comes up where, okay, this business owner had these expenses and they were legitimate, and he perhaps could have taken a deduction for them, but he didn't have the right records. And without the right records, you lose out on legitimate write-offs. And so I like to emphasize the importance of record keeping, what is required and for what purposes, and ways that you can simplify it with various apps that we have and software and such.
I'm going to digress for a moment and go back. I finally have it totally figured out after all these years of talking with you about the book that really your target audience for the book, there's two target audiences. The one I would call a professional audience, that would be the accountants, the certified public accountants, the public accountants, those folks whose job is to do all the proper, or will help businesses do the proper record keeping, prepare their tax returns, and hopefully get for them all the deductions that they're able to take for their businesses. Now, I have to believe that you have over the 25 years, have developed a huge audience of accountants that can't wait for your book to come out so they can start to get to work for preparing the 2018 tax returns.
Absolutely.
Then,
I have a good following, and I love them, because many of them over the years put questions to me that challenge me to answer them, and I often incorporate those questions into the book in future editions, because if they have a question for their clients about a certain matter, maybe other people have the same question. So I love that. And also, some of them find mistakes that I correct and can correct in my online supplement right away, so which is good.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. One of the great things you do, and one of the big pluses for the book, is that you are, once the book is published, and it comes out every November for the upcoming tax return year 2018. Well, actually, it's for 2017 tax return, but you call it Small Business Taxes 2018.
It's for the 18 filing season.
Correct. And there are new regulations every year, and nobody keeps a better track of those regulations than you do. That's what you do.
Well, there are new regulations and new laws every year, too. And for example, we know that Congress is in the midst of discussions about tax reform, and buried in some of those provisions are effective dates for 2017. Some of those rules, which if enacted, could impact 2017 returns. Not a lot, but some. And so anything that develops in that respect will be in the supplement.
Do you have some inside sources as to what the new tax laws are going to be? Because we know that it's becoming a giant political fight right now, and sometimes when politics gets into the formula, crazy things can happen. So, do you have any?
I think that what we're involved in, and if we could step back and have some perspective, is just a normal legislative process. This is no different than any other major tax act that came before. And in the past, what we used to have was we would have a House bill with their own report explaining what it was all about. And then we had a Senate Finance Committee bill and what that was all about. We had information there. And then it goes to conference, and they settle up differences, and we have a final package. And so whatever is being talked about at the moment, we have to take with a grain of salt, because it may not be what's in the final measure. And again, I think that the media enjoys making a big deal about, this is here, this is there, this is going to do that, this isn't going to do that. And until the dust settles, we really don't know.
You mean there really is such a thing as fake news?
Well, the bottom line is that if everybody is unhappy, then it might be a good thing, because it means that you're eliminating a lot of the loopholes and special interest things that people will say they're unhappy about, but it probably makes for good law. But again, we have to wait and see what the final package looks like.
Okay, well, we spent a moment with the accountants as a target audience. Your second target audience is folks like myself, who are small business owners, and we don't understand enough about our small business, because many times we just pass it over to the accountant, and we might get, the accountant does what the accountant does, and depending upon how aggressive or how hands-on the accountant is, you may, hopefully there's improvement, so that here's what's here, here's how you have to improve your business. One thing you did with me about 5 years ago, it wasn't anything really special, but somehow I heard a challenge for me, and I went and I bought some software, and I went through preparing my own tax return through that software, using your book as a supplement to, okay, here's that line. What does that line mean? How do I take best advantage to that line? And then I prepared what I called a first draft of my tax return. I gave it to my accountant, okay? And that year, the accountant only charged me about an hour of time, because I had done all the work, and he looked and said, well, you need to make a change here, but it was only an hour of time. So I saved myself a bunch of money by taking that approach. Not that he didn't work, I mean, he did a great job for me, but the most important thing was I learned so much about my own business, about going through that tax return line by line, then using the Bible as, okay, what does that mean? What's a practical application? This year,
one of the things that I like to stress is it's not even so much tax return preparation, and you did point out a money saving idea, but it's essential for a business owner to understand certain things about taxes so that you can make tax smart decisions in your business operations throughout the year. So for example, you need more help. Well, should you hire an employee, or should you just engage an independent contractor? What does that mean to you? What are the costs involved? What are your responsibilities? Should you buy or lease equipment? So these kinds of practical everyday decisions that I would say most business owners don't call up their accountants and say, what should I do? They just go ahead. But if they have this tax education in their already known to them, then they can make good business decisions that will have advantageous tax results.
Well, you did something this year. I don't know if you realize you did it or not, but you hit another milestone with the book. You went to 700
Oh,
pages.
yeah. I do know that.
I'm sure your publishers told you that.
Yeah, they did. I think they kept the price the same, but that was pretty good. So that was pretty good.
Well, that's another thing. I went to my friendly bookstore, and I paid $22.95 plus tax. And as you've heard me say this every time we've talked about your book, it is the best $22.95 investment that a small business can make, bar none, because you can learn so much about your business, and you can learn so much to help you improve the way that you do business. And I'm not talking about the marketing and sales kinds of things. I'm talking about, because money matters has to be the number one fear, the number one concern about business. Are we making enough money? Can we continue? Are we spending too much money? And so that's the value that I have found for the book. But Barbara, I came up with a new way for the small business owner like myself to read your book. Okay? Well, we've talked about this. No. When I say read it, my my recommendation is to go to the index, okay, because the index lists all the keywords that are used within the book. Go down that list of in the index, the keywords, and write down on a file card all those keywords that you want to A, learn more about, just you want to learn more about, or B, it's pertinent to your business, okay? Each keyword you put on a different file card. Once a day, once a week, you have to do it. Put all those file cards into a fishbowl, pull one out, and see which topic you're gonna deal with for that day. Get the keyword, go to the page, because you've listed the pages, the index lists the pages where they are, and read about it and learn about it. Take notes on how that is pertinent to your business. How about that for a way for the small business owner to read the book?
I'm not sure you're going to convince a lot of people to do that, but there is a lot of help there.
No, but this 700 pages is a lot of stuff, and you don't want to scare small businesses away from a 700-page book. Oh, I don't have time to read a 700-page book. Well, if you've got the time, if you make the time, but get into the book with those things that are pertinent to your business. So that's how I'm going to do it. So my topics for study in the next however long: aborted business efforts, health savings accounts, and hold that thought because I want to get back to that in a moment. Miscellaneous business income, healthcare mandates, hold that thought, I want to get back to that in a moment. Health insurance, medical coverage, intellectual property, donation of your intellectual property, suing for infringement upon your intellectual property, insurance, home office, and hobby losses. Those are the things that I'm going to focus more on in the coming year, and so that's how I'm going to deal with it now. You want to do part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and continue on there so you can give a summary of those?
Sure.
Okay.
So part 2 is just about business income and losses. And it can come up in normal operations or by selling property and or miscellaneous ways to interest on a bank account kind of thing. So that's in part 2. Part 3 is business deductions and credits. And that's really the core of the business. The book initially started out as just small business deductions. That was the initial edition.
25 years ago.
Well, actually it was 24, but anyway, we expanded from there, and that's how the book grew and grew, as you point out. And so that's the main part. And then we have part 4 is tax planning. And here we have various strategies, a lot having to do with different stages in your business. For example, start opening or closing a business, succession planning. What are you going to do with your business when you retire or die? Having multiple businesses and what that means from a tax perspective. A sideline business. Many people just operate as a sideline business. And that brings up the issue of the hobby loss that you mentioned earlier, and other matters that you're in tax planning and so much more. And then what I like is also in the appendix, we have information returns, because there's an obligation to file, as we know, the W-2s or 1099 miss if we have independent contractors, but there are other information returns that are required for different purposes, and it's an obligation on us, and if we don't do it, we're penalized. And that's what Appendix B covers, are tax penalties. And I can't tell you how many tax penalties there are, and many are now adjusted annually for inflation. And I'm sure the list will never diminish. It will only grow when it comes to tax penalties. And some of them are specifically for tax return preparers.
Oh my goodness.
And then there's a checklist of tax-related corporate resolutions. So if you're a corporation, whether a C or an S, you're required by state law to hold an annual meeting. And in your annual meeting, you go over certain matters. And even if you're a one-person corporation, you do this. But from a tax perspective, there are some resolutions that you do want to put in the corporate minutes and cover. And so we have a list of that there. And then finally, it's just sort of a checklist of amounts that are or not adjusted annually for inflation. And that's just a helpful kind of checklist to know, well, this, for example, the $25 limit on deducting business gifts. So if my employee gets married and I give a gift, $25. That's the limit on a business gift, and that hasn't changed since 1962. So, there are some limits that are fixed and some adjust annually, and so we cover that there.
Listen to you speak, Barbara. I don't think I've ever asked you this question. Has this book ever been marketed to universities to be used as a textbook?
No.
You know what? I have a friend at the University of Cincinnati, and he's well known around the world. I am going to take the time and present the book to him and say, what do you think about this as a textbook at the University of Cincinnati?
Yeah,
we'll see where that goes.
I greatly appreciate it, and I think it would be a good resource, but the reason why I think it's not used that way is because it's not annotated. So it doesn't say code section so-and-so says this, or revenue ruling so-and-so said you could do that. So I think without that kind of reference, I'm not sure that they would want to use it, but go for it. I love it.
I am going to go to my friend Chuck Matthews. He's at the University of Cincinnati. Actually, he and I usually speak every Global Entrepreneurship Week. We haven't this week. I actually lecture to his class. I'm looking at a certificate that his class presented to me about 6 or 7 years ago. I went there and we talked about Global Entrepreneurship Week, and it was a thrilling experience for me. I haven't spoken to Chuck for over a year. I am going to contact him this week, and I'm going to get together with him and share the book and get his thoughts as a college professor. What do you think about this? And we'll see. So, and I will get back to you with that information.
Sounds great.
Okay, so I think I've held one of the most important discussions that you and I have every year for last. And it's one of those challenges that not only does every small business in this country has as a challenge, but every individual, every household in this country has as a challenge. And that is?
Health insurance.
Healthcare. And I'm my head is spinning with all the craziness that's going. Now, we have seen that this is a political vendetta to try to do away with whatever your thoughts are.
Let me just jump in and tell you one bit of what I think is good news for small businesses. As part of the 21st Century Cures Act, which was passed at the end of 2016, they created a new healthcare option specifically for small businesses. And it's called QSARA, Qualified Small Employer Health Reimbursement Arrangements. And I'll just give you a little background on this. Many small businesses over the years just were used to not having their own policies, but they would reimburse their workers for the cost of their coverage. And that was just common practice. Well, then the IRS said under the Affordable Care Act, that's a violation, and you could be subject to a $100 per day per employee penalty for doing that. That was a no-no. So then the IRS said, well, until we do something or get guidance, we're going to suspend the penalty. And then we went for a year and a half in no man's land where the suspension of the penalty ended, but we didn't have anything to rely on. But then Congress enacted this new law, and what it says is that small employers, meaning those not subject to the employer mandate under the Affordable Care Act, can pay for employee health coverage up to $1 amount, and it's $49.50 a year for self-only coverage, $10,000 for family coverage for 2017. Those numbers are indexed for inflation. And employees just have to verify that they've got the coverage. They don't contribute anything. It's all paid by, that's all employer money. And, certain other rules apply. But it's an option now for small employers to do this. And it's less costly for many small employers to do this than to have to go through the process of finding coverage and paying for coverage.
Actually, this is the first time I've heard about it. Give me those letters again. I want to do some reading myself.
QSE.
QSE.
HRA.
Well, I know HRA. That's
health reimbursement
right.
account.
You and I have had discussions about that. Wow. So, are you the only one talking? Are you? It's brand. This concept is brand new.
Just started for 2017, and in fact, we really didn't even get any good guidance till within a month or so. So it's really a new concept that I think many small business owners and even perhaps tax professionals are unaware of. But this is something to look into.
Not something it must be looked into, because it might be what the small business owner needs, so they don't have to be over. There's a formula here. There's a foundation here where an employer can really get involved and as a benefit to the employee. You and I have talked about this. Health insurance as coverage actually started just after the World War II, and the soldiers were returning home, and because there was a demand for their services for employment, employees said, well, geez, I'm going to offer health insurance. And that's how the whole thing got started, way back at the end of the war. And so it's taken off different iterations, and the HRAs. Before we end too, remind me, I want one comment on HSAs, because I've always said that we don't pay enough attention to an HSA. And you're going to answer one question for me, and if the answer is what I think it's going to be, wow. So I want to pursue this more, and please put stuff out there in the name of Barbara Weltman that talks about this stuff, because it's important. People aren't talking about it. They don't know about it. Accountants don't know about it.
I have a blog out on it, and so these are things that people just need to follow. I put out 2 blogs every month that are posted on my website, and I think this week, in fact, I did something on QSARs based on the new guidance. So
somehow I'm missing the total, Barbara Weltman. I'm getting most of it, but not the total. You're still putting out your newsletter the first of the month.
I do. The newsletter is a roundup every month of all the blogs. So if you look at the newsletter, it'll be a roundup of all the blogs.
I will do that. Okay. One final discussion point today, and that's about health savings accounts. Where's your mindset on that today? Talk about that for a moment, please.
Health savings accounts, I think, are the future. I think we're going to, regardless of what happens with tax reform, they're not going away. They're going to be there, regardless of what happens with Affordable Care Act. The health savings accounts are going to be there. The question is that there have been proposals to greatly raise what you can put into the health savings accounts, because what you can put into the health savings accounts may not even cover your deductibles for the year. And so certainly we want to encourage people to consider this option, because if you use a health savings account, it's combined with a high deductible health plan, meaning a low cost insurance policy where you pay the first dollars until you reach a deductible threshold that you've paid out of pocket. And the good thing about it is, for healthy individuals who don't use their money in the health savings account, it just grows and grows. And it's a savings plan in a sense for many individuals.
And can be passed on to heirs.
Well, it gets taxed, but yeah, it can be passed
No,
on. It doesn't get wasted.
my understanding was it doesn't get taxed if it's still used for medical purposes.
I think it can pay passed on tax-free to your spouse, but I think that the heirs, we'll have to check that out and see, but I think that in fact, it doesn't roll over to non-spouses. So they can inherit it, but they have to pay tax on it.
Well, if that's the case, it may very well be. I think that more emphasis needs to be put on there. Thank you for taking the time to comment on them. Now, my question is...
They have been growing in popularity every year. In fact, initially they were thought of as a mechanism to help small businesses afford coverage for their workers, but now almost every major corporation offers this as one of the healthcare options to employees. And so there's great flexibility in how you arrange it, who pays for the contributions, and advantages for payroll taxes. So it's a really great option.
Why don't you give a quick professional definition of a health savings account?
So a health savings account is, think of it as an IRA, but the prerequisite to having one is that you have a high deductible health plan. And what's a high deductible health plan is defined annually according to the deductibles and the premiums and such. So once you have that, then you can have a health savings account. Once you have the health savings account, it doesn't go away. You can't add more money unless you continue to have a high deductible health plan, and you can't add more money once you begin Medicare.
I was just going to say that. I'm not subject to that anymore. Well, fortunately, unfortunately, actually, in my particular case, Medicare was the first good health insurance I have had in 20 years, because I went through more than 10 years of having no health insurance because of pre-existing conditions. I was quoted $1,500 a month premiums, and that was the best quote I got, was $1,500 a month, and it was just it was out of the question. But can a health insurance premium, is that one of the items that can be deducted, can be taken from your health savings account or not?
No, not your basic health insurance costs. Certain health insurance premiums, okay, but not your basic insurance.
And there used to be about 190 different things that you could use that health savings account for. I'm sure the number's still about 200 now.
Oh yeah, there's just about anything that would be an itemized medical expense would be able to be withdrawn tax-free from the health savings account. And in fact, one of the proposals under consideration, and I don't know whether it will be enacted, would be to restore the option to take tax-deductible withdrawals for over-the-counter medications. That was allowed several years ago, then it was repealed, and bringing that back would be a real boon to people using HSAs.
Except if you're over 65. Well, fortunately, I am over 65. Fortunately, I am over 65 and having this discussion. But I've been very, very pleased with my Medicare coverage, and I now have a supplement to that. And the particular one I have, because I'm in an HMO, it doesn't cost me anything. I've got increased benefits over Medicare at no additional cost because I'm in an HMO, and I wanted the doctors, and I was already using the doctors all in one area, so it was a no-brainer for me. So I've got great coverage. I've had $50,000 or $60,000 of health and of expenses this year. I had more than that last year, so I'm a happy camper on that one, Barbara. Well, thank you once again for probably the 10th time for taking time during Global Entrepreneurship Week to discuss one of the most important things I think that happens in any given year, and that's Barbara coming out with the new edition. And as I briefly mentioned, one of the wonderful add-ons that you have to the book is that you update things in a monthly online, that folks who buy the book have access to that online edition that you've made. And thank you for all the wonderful things you do for small business. I know it's your passion, and nobody does it better than Barbara Weltman.
Well, I hope people will come to my website, barbaraweltman.com, and sign up for my idea of the day, which you mentioned, and get my blogs and a lot of free information there.
A lot of free information, and as you've heard me say this before, the very first email I read 7 days a week is one from you, and I can open it up at different times. It was 3 o'clock in the morning some years. It went to 4 o'clock in the morning. Now it's sometime in between 3 and 4. That's the first email I read every day. So thank you for making my day get me started and get some ideas for the day and where should we be going today. So once again, it's Small Business Taxes 2018. I bought this at my neighborhood bookstore. For sure, you can get it on Amazon. I highly recommend it because you will not make a better investment than I pay $22.95. It can be bought for less than that on Amazon. I bought it for less than that in past years, but it's the best investment you can make in your business in any one given year. So thank you, Barbara, and we'll talk again soon.